It is 12 days until the 2023 ICC Cricket World Cup happening in India gets underway. And of course, the Proteas are jetting off to the subcontinent nation today. Captain Temba Bavuma will be leading this side. He is one of 8 players who will be playing at the tournament for the first time. The Proteas begin their World Cup campaign on the 8th of October. They're taking on Sri Lanka, of course. For more on this, we are joined in studio by the captain himself, Bavuma, as well as senior sports journalist Ulungani Zama. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making it to studio at this time of the morning. Lungani, I'm going to start with you. This, like any other, is an incredibly important World Cup. But I think for the Proteas and I think for South Africa as a whole, it's a significant World Cup because this is a Proteas team that for the very first time in this country's history is being led into a 50-over World Cup by a black cricketer. And I know South Africa always tries very hard to not put colour to these kinds of things. But in terms of representation for the young black boy in the Eastern Cape or in KwaZulu-Natal or in Cape Town or in Soweto, this is important that when they look at their screen and they look at who's walking this Proteas team out to a opening World Cup match, they see a young black man doing it. Just talk to us about the significance of this 50-over World Cup.
Yeah, very significant. I think if you know closer people like we do, they say that you need a closer to lead in order to break new ground. The rugby's done that. If you ask Vatango Beni, he'll tell you the same thing. But on a serious note, it is important in terms of representation to know that there are opportunities, there are doors that have been opened in the last 30 years that allow a cricketer from Elanga or wherever to eventually lead their country to the biggest pinnacle in the game. You know, the 50-over World Cup is still the pinnacle of the sport. In India, of all places, what is now the centre of cricket, really. England might be the ancestral home, but the current home where the power resides is India. So to have a team that is new and fresh and going in a new direction, it's a new generation of cricketer, and to be led as you say, by somebody who represents so much of the nation, is very important and exciting.
I mean, you know, we're at a point now where I think we've gotten tired of talking about how the Proteas just don't know how to win a World Cup, you know. But it is still very much an important point to make because we always go into a World Cup as one of the favorites. Yes, I know there are very few teams that compete at a World Cup compared to a football World Cup, for example, but we still go in there as one of the favorites to win this title. And many a World Cup we've gone in there off the back of some incredibly strong ODI performances, like right now, where we've just beaten Australia, which is the most successful team in a 50-over World Cup. Should we keep talking about it, to keep the pressure on them, to remind the boys that we do not have a World Cup and we look to you guys every 4-year cycle to do it for us? Should we keep putting on that pressure on them?
I mean, it's there. You can't ignore it, and I think more than the pressure, it's an opportunity for people to write a new narrative that they are the first. It's not as if this team has played every World Cup since '92. A lot of the players, 8 of them, are playing their first World Cup. So as much as there's a pressure within the team, it's a new opportunity for a lot of these guys. They haven't been burdened with that pressure before, but they know the expectations of the nation because we are still one of the biggest cricketing countries in the world. We've got a proud heritage of producing superstars. And like you say, they seem to be trending upwardly at the right time. I mean, their performance against Australia recently was promising signs because there were some big performances with bat and ball. There was performances under pressure, being down in the series and coming back and winning in the fashion that they did. So you look at that as good omens and you say, okay, maybe not the favourite, absolutely, but certainly every team knows that on their day the Proteas can defeat anyone, as they did against Australia recently.
Temba, I saw a viral video on social media where there was a young boy who was being asked by his mother, "What's your name?" And that boy said, "Mani Libok," you know, and the video was shown to Mani Libok, our fly half of the Springboks, and, you know, it really brought up some emotions in him because it said, "I'm seen, you know, and I'm admired by children so young that some of them don't even know how to write their own names yet, but they know who I am and what it is I symbolize." Just talk to us about the importance of representation in what has been always considered a white-dominated sport, that being cricket and rugby as well, where in 2019 we had a black captain for the very first time leading us to glory. And now 4 years later we have a black captain that we are hoping and praying will also lead us to glory. No pressure. No pressure whatsoever. But just talk to us about that representation, Temba, for you to go out there and be seen as the first black captain for the Proteas, leading us into a World Cup.
Yeah, I actually saw that video. It was quite touching and an emotional one, and I can only imagine the emotions that Mani was going through as he was obviously having a look at that video. And I think, you know, for him and for a lot of us, it puts a lot of things into perspective in terms of what you do and how it touches and reaches a lot of people, young and old. And like, you know, he felt, like he said, you know, it really gives you that feeling of recognition and significance by what you're doing, but also your presence within that national team. You know, and I think, you know, to bring it more closer to home with myself, you know, there's definitely that element of, you know, privilege and pressure in the opportunity and the responsibility I have. It's a massive one, I think for obvious reasons. And I think what I always try to do is to try put my best foot forward and hopefully achieve or match the expectations that are there. You know, you spoke about the pressure of the Proteas team not having had the opportunity or not being able to win a ICC event. I think that still exists within us, but I think it's gone past the point of it being a pressure, but more of something that the guys and myself we've tried to embrace and look forward to in terms of doing something that's never been done within our cricket teams.
This has been a historic year for South African sport, and we can only but hope that the history continues, at least where the Rugby World Cup is concerned. We defend our title. We become only the second nation after New Zealand to defend their title, but the first nation to win 4 world titles. So that in itself is its own history. But the history started earlier this year, where for the first time a senior cricket team in South Africa made it to a World Cup final, you know, that being the Proteas women. Congratulations to them. And then you had Banyana Banyana at the FIFA Women's World Cup, the first senior football team, national team, or any national team, in fact, even if it's not senior, that made it to a knockout stage of a FIFA World Cup. It's just a historic year, you know, and what's to say that you guys can't also take that baton from both these national teams and continue that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what happens on the field. You know, we can talk about the significance, we can talk about history, we can talk about, you know, representation and all of these very emotive things, but at the end of the day, it's about the bat and the ball. And that's what needs to be your guys' focus. How much of the focus has been on that and that alone, and not all the noise that the Morenas and the Lunganis and all the South Africans are making?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I take inspiration from what Rassi said within the documentary at the box, where he said that, you know, the most important thing is winning and everything else will sort itself out. So I think in the same vein, you know, us as a team, you know, a lot of our investment goes to what we do on the field, how we want to play our cricket. I think you've heard over and over the guys talk about the brand of cricket that we'd like to play and the brand of cricket that we believe will be able to help us get through pressure moments. And that's been our focus. And I think, you know, looking at this year, you know, in terms of our performances, where, you know, there's been a strong investment in that space. I think our performances have been very inspirational, I would say. I've enjoyed being part of that group, and I guess our biggest challenge is replicating those type of performances, obviously at the World Cup, where everything, all emotions, expectations are heightened. But I agree, I think winning should be the main thing, and it tends to put everything else into place.
Do these guys look like they have that mentality, Lungani, that killer instinct, that instinct that says when the chips are down in an innings that they'll find that one guy, either with bat or ball, to come out and save the day? Do we have that we saw in those last 3 ODIs against Australia, that, you know what, these boys can do it even when nobody thinks they can?
Yeah, of course. Can I answer you with a story? Because he's not going to tell you. Speaking about Mani Libok, and the representation and the importance of seeing people that look like yourself. We went to a golf day with this guy not too long ago after he'd made 100 at the Wonders. And it was predominantly Afrikaans old men at this golf day, and we got there and he's trying to putt. He must have hit 2 putts in 20 minutes because every single guy was coming to him. Oh, my national captain, my hero, please can I take a selfie, please can I take this? And he was taken aback. I ended up being cameraman. But he's recognized, he holds one of the highest offices in the country in terms of sport. So it's a pressure that he embraces, and I think it's a pressure that the team embraces because they know the love that is there and the expectation that is there for them to finally break through the ceiling that's been there for every team that's come since '92. So I think they've got enough match winners. I think they've got enough young kids who haven't been scarred by previous tournaments, who are ready to just express themselves as they have been doing, whether it's SA20 or the last season. So it's an exciting tournament for them to go to.
That Lungani has just brought up, Temba, is coming some 12 months or so after those very people probably, and understandably so, were calling for your head. They were saying that you're not, never mind not a good enough captain, you're just not a good enough cricketer to be donning the Proteas colours. So many people felt that you do not deserve to be anywhere near a Proteas team, probably not even SAA for that matter. Just step away and go play franchise cricket because you're just not good enough. And then you come through in 2023 and you smash 3 centuries in ODI format. You know, you perform as well as you did at the SA20 when in fact at that time you had not even been picked up at the auction so much. You were leading every single publication's headlines in terms of both your performance and whether or not you even deserved to be playing the game of cricket. How did you come back from that?
Well, I didn't know it was that deep, to be honest.
And it probably is important because you were just, you know, you were in your zone and you were focused on making sure that your game gets as good as it was, yeah?
Yeah, I think as a player you kind of accept, I guess, the ebbs and flows of the game, if I could say, where, you know, there's certain, I guess, phases in your career where things are going well. I guess I'm in that phase now. And then there's phases where things are not going well. And I think through those periods when things are going well, when things are not going well, I think your character gets tested a lot, who you really are, how you deal with all those negative emotions, not so much from what happens outside, but more about what happens internally within your head. And I guess it's finding ways to be emotionally stable, but making sure that you still keep the confidence and belief in yourself and what you can do as a player. I think a couple of months of bad performances don't dictate or decide what type of player you are. You know, I think it's the understanding that you've done a lot, you've done enough to get to that point, and also the belief that you'll get through that period. So, I mean, I guess I went through all of that, those dark times, if you can say, and now things are a lot better. Did I change anything? To be honest, no, I didn't really change much, but I think probably through that period, I guess it made me a lot more mentally stronger. And I think there's learning and experiences that you take through that period that you take into good stead when things are going well.
How important has the support from the association been? And this is an association that itself in the last 5 years has gone through so much in terms of, you know, the leadership changes, you know, just the struggles that CSA has experienced itself. But they've still managed to, where you are concerned at least, and I think even just all the captains have been able to stand by your side and back you through all of those dark times that you've experienced. You've also had leaders in the likes of Kagiso Rabada, you know, the Quinton de Cox, the David Millers that have also been there with you, you know, to say that you are still our captain. How important has that been for you and your leadership and what it is you're trying to do as a Protea captain?
Yeah, it's been massive. I think I'm fortunate that those guys that you mentioned, I've played with them since we were at school. So in terms of the respect, in terms of the understanding of, I guess, the quality of the person, of the player, you know, that never comes into question, irrespective of what happens on the field of play. And it's understanding that you can lean on those guys when things are going well. I said that I didn't change things. The biggest change was more articulating the vision within the team, what it is that we'd like to achieve and how we're gonna do that. And it's having the buy-in from those exact guys, Quinton, KG, David Miller, guys like Aiden Marker and Clausen, where they bought into the vision, and most importantly started showing it within their action. And I mean, that obviously makes your job a lot easier as a leader, as a captain, when you have players who are willing to go to war to you. but also live out exactly what you are doing. So I think as a leader, as much as you walk with the responsibility or the tag of being captain, it's never just yourself. You can never do it yourself. You need a couple of warriors who, like I said, will go to war with you.
His colleagues, his teammates, his band of leaders have bought into his vision, have bought into Rob Walter's vision, have bought into Cricket South Africa's vision and what it is they're trying to do. Where do we fit in as media? Because our responsibility is to ensure that, we tell the truth, that we are, we're objective, and that we're not trying to buy face of anybody because, we don't want them to look at us funny at a golf day or whatever, and we don't want them to feel some type of way about us. But we also are responsible in ensuring that we participate in nation building. And we've seen that with the Springboks. What is our role with this team going into this World Cup? What do we say about this team going into this World Cup as the media? Do we state the facts, or do we try and encourage them with the good, feel-good stories?
No, I think, we've got a role, and I think Temba, we've had tough conversations, we've had tough press conferences with all the team. They're in a performance industry and they understand that, and I think they appreciate the honesty. And the minute we stop being objective to the public, you start running a very fine line. It's important to obviously champion these stories and give the added context that you might not understand, that even as you struggle, the entire team is behind you. You ask any one of those players that are going to India with Temba, they're fully behind him. They believe he's the right captain regardless of performance. Whether you made a duck or 100 yesterday, you're a leader. Every leader who's led in South Africa well is supported. Sia went through the same thing. There's crisis in confidence. There's people who ask you from the outside. But if you've got the support of the team around you, whatever happens beyond that, it doesn't really matter because the team is behind you. And our job as media is obviously to keep them honest in terms of the performance and the expectations based on the talents that they have. We expect much from Temba and his team because we know how good they are. We've seen them do incredible things. And cricket is one of those sports we're waiting because we know that the potential is there. It wouldn't be a fluke if it happened. It would be about time. So it's that impatience of waiting and waiting and waiting, but you know that at some point someone's going to break through, and the hope is that it's going to happen in the next 2 months.
We can definitely hope that it happens in the next 2 months. Gentlemen, when you're having a great conversation such as this, time does run away from you. We do not have a lot of it, but Temba, I'm going to leave this last question with you. I had a conversation with Russell Domingo a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him, I love predictions. I love putting people's heads on the block and asking, what do you think is going to happen here, there, or wherever? And I asked him, who do you think is the favorites at this World Cup? Do we have favorites at this World Cup? And he said there are about at least 5 teams that have the potential of winning this World Cup, and neither of them are stronger than the other, because if you look at maybe their performances in the last 18 months, they've been wishy-washy. Everybody's gone through a bit of a roller coaster in terms of their form. Do you agree with that sentiment? Who do you feel could be potentially the favorites? Who do you see making it into that final?
Yeah, I agree with the sentiments. I think if we look at our group stages, there's no game where we say that's an easy game or that's an obvious win. We understand that every game we're going to have to turn up and we're going to have to play close to our best to win that game. I think, obviously, India, I think you can't write them off. Host country in their own conditions, they'll have everything in their favour, so you can't write them off. But I think, as Russell says, there's other teams, there's Pakistan, there's England who, on their day, can beat anyone. And I think, I'd also throw ourselves there. Russell actually had a conversation with him yesterday, and I went to the stadium to collect my cricket bag. I obviously still had the excitement of, what we've just achieved within the Australia series, and Russell being Russell, he was very quick to bring my feet down to earth and tell me not to get ahead of myself. But look, there's a quiet confidence within the team. We believe that we can do some good stuff there, without being overly zealous or arrogant in any way, but we know we're going to have to play some really good cricket over that 5 or 6 week period to be in contention for anything of worth.
It is happening in about 12 days' time, this World Cup. You guys are starting on the 8th of October. You're taking on Sri Lanka. Temba, you guys are leaving today. All the best. I think I speak on behalf of a lot of South Africans. Yes, some may be a little, cautious in terms of their optimism for the Proteas, given what's happened over the last couple of World Cups. But I think I speak on behalf of a lot of South Africans when I say that we believe in you. We genuinely feel that you can do it. And if the last 3 ODIs against Australia are anything to prove, that wasn't a B-side Australia. That was the best that they have. You guys definitely do know your stuff, and that you can definitely do something at this World Cup. So all the best. And I hope that when I speak to you on your return, there is a trophy, a World Cup trophy, sitting right there. We definitely believe in you, and naminga kuhle mfethu.
Thank you, man.
Lungani, thank you so much as well for just joining us and having this conversation with us. That, of course, is the Proteas captain, Temba Bavuma. He's going to leave the studio and head off, of course, as he prepares to go pack his bags and start this journey for South Africa as we look to win our very first World Cup title. It's happening in India. It's starting in 12 days' time, and the Proteas, of course, are ready and raring to go to represent their country. Also joining us is senior sports journalist, cricket writer Lungani Zama, just talking to us about what we can expect for this upcoming World Cup in the subcontinent nation.